Pani.Earth is a citizen think tank. We started this organization last year, but the making of this entity was almost 8 years in the working for us to kind of understand the gap in knowledge and the way activism is today, and to empower that is why we founded Pani.Earth. The format of this presentation is to kind of goes back to what Hariharan said earlier in our discussion, is that you have, when you're speaking with the government or the decision makers, you have 2 minutes, tell us what you want. What you want question from the citizens. To answer that question is why Pani.Earth exists today, I would say. Because we were faced with a very question of, in the meetings with the government, it's like, what do you want? To precisely define what do we want is the journey that we undertake. It is our mission to empower citizens with data, information, and analysis that can save, reverse, and protected areas. I'm currently presenting from Sakleshpur in the mountains of Western Ghats. So as you can see, to the left are the streams, and I've been trekking quite a bit on the headwaters of Hemavati River. You see the images here of the mountains. This is where I am currently. And I think it's for the protection of these wild areas, these headwater streams, the rivers, is why Pani.Earth exists today. It is for the protection of these that we work day in and day out. I just wanted to share that. So the question here is, what do we do when we want to protect such spaces? When we have to conserve the urban spaces which are already polluted, but then also the spaces which are seeing pollution, which are seeing degradation because of various human pressures. It's very similar to what you do when you want to apply for college or buy a computer or apply for a job or travel. It's about research. I think it's learning the pictures as it shows here. It's learning from the people who are on the ground. It's learning from the citizens. It's learning from the farmers. It's learning from the women. It's learning from the rivers. Learning from the trees and the ecology itself. And you do research. When we say research is we connect science with what's happening on the ground to give context to the issue. It can be pollution, it can be biodiversity, it can be river flows. So all of these need to be connected, and we connect it through research. We investigate like a journalist, because science and journalism usually don't go along together. So you bring science to water journalism. So that's investigation. All of this is to find the facts and data so you can build a proper narrative which can lead to a particular outcome. That outcome is the ask that we have for the government, for the decision makers. So this happens with trailing the rivers, connecting the people, working with the government, working with the judiciary. So all of this leads to, number one, to understand the problem at hand. This understanding of the problem in the context of rivers, in the context of water bodies, does not exist. So that is the primary reason why we have to do all of that. To understand the problem, to identify what must be done. I cannot stress enough in terms of what must be done. Currently, today, in terms of rivers and water bodies in the Kaveri Basin, the dominant narrative of Pollution Control Board and the government of Karnataka and the governments all over India is that sewage is the problem. And I know many of you have worked with Ganga, and building more sewage treatment plants, we've already seen that does not solve the issue of pollution of Ganga. So there are specific things that is very local to the areas that must be the problems that must be identified, and such research identifies what is the problem and what must be done to address the problem. And then the next most important step is to communicate and change public opinions, because the mainstream media is not communicating the problem and the solutions, but a general overall sewage narrative and build sewage treatment plants. So once we find what must be done, it needs to be communicated to change public opinion. And then, of course, lobby the government and decision makers to act and seek judicial intervention.